here now on the difference in the American political reaction to this attack versus New Zealand, for instance, is conservative commentator and documentarian Dinesh D'Souza. Dinesh, thank you so much for joining us here. You've looked at this issue, the difference between the two, both terrorist attacks, but treated very differently.
Yes, the Sri Lanka attack, the attack on multiple churches with now hundreds of victims, was an attack in which you have Christians as the targets or the victims and radical Muslims as the perpetrators. And this sort of attack of radical Muslims against Christians has been occurring all over the world. We've seen it in the Middle East. We've seen it in North Africa. We've seen it in Asia. So it's part of a systematic pattern of targeting. Yet, this notion of Christians as victims and Muslims as perpetrators disrupts the progressive narrative, if you will. And so not just the Democrats, but also the media left has been remarkably quiet about the Sri Lanka attacks in comparison to the New Zealand attack. The New Zealand attack, of course, fit the narrative. You had a mosque that was the target, so Muslims become the victims. You had a white supremacist who was the perpetrator. So they were all over that. And they were not only focusing on the attack, but they were focusing on the motivation of the attacker. And they were trying to link the white supremacist to white supremacy all over the world. Even Trump's name was brought into it, even though the perpetrator in that case was really clear that he hated President Trump. So what you see is a massive disparity of the way that these two incidents have been treated. It's kind of a window into the way, I think, in which news gets distorted and tragedies get, in a way, played for political gain.
Yeah, and you had several leaders within the Democratic side of the aisle, including former President Barack Obama. You had the governor, Democratic governor of Colorado. You had Representative Kildee out of Michigan, all saying Easter worshipers as opposed to Christians, as if they were, this all happened within an hour of each other, as if they said, let's not refer to Christianity. But why? Why offend so many Americans by forgetting and not naming what Easter is actually all about?
Well, I think if you acknowledge that there is this systematic persecution and targeting, terrorist targeting of Christians, then that goes against, if you will, the left-wing narrative. The left-wing narrative is that, in this country at least, Christians are the bad guys, and the poor Muslims are the victims of terrorist targeting. And so it's not just that they wouldn't use the word Christian, it's that in the New Zealand attack, there was a tremendous quest for the motivation of the attacker. Why did he do it? Answer, he's a white supremacist. Therefore, white supremacy is a global problem that needs our urgent attention. Now, in this case, the motivation is, if anything, even more clear. This is ISIS. These are radical Muslims who are doing this in the name of Islam and targeting, religious targeting of Christians. And yet, no discussion of motivation. In fact, the ones who talk about motivation basically say, listen, we should not make the mistake of equating the people who do these things with Muslims in general.
Yeah,
so a desire to distinguish between the perpetrators and Muslims in general.
Dinesh, thank you for your expertise. I mean, you would think we could be united on calling it out exactly what it is and being against terrorism every single time, no matter what. But when it happens against Christians, call them Christians. Dinesh, thank you.